Kimberly Ennico-Smith is going to talk to us about a catalog focused on lunar resources. So, Kimberly?
Thank you. Com check. Can you
Yep.
hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with everyone, and we want to solicit further input on this idea of a catalog focused on lunar resources. Can we see a common repository of data, physical, environmental, other attributes related to lunar resources in a one-stop shopping? The status quo has been each mission, each resource team makes their own resource models and maps. Next slide, please. So as mentioned in previous talks, the work has begun. You know, there is an ISRU measurement plan, the LWIMS that was mentioned in the chat earlier. And there's also been, the League has talked about the identification of lunar critical data products. But how do you integrate those data into the planetary data ecosystem and follow fair practices has not quite been addressed. And I believe this is one of the topics for the workshops. We will admit that, oh, absolutely, there are data repositories and assets available. But can we go and think of the larger picture? And on the right, I showed that the Mars community, after a multi-year effort, has put together an integrated set of mapping products for the subsurface water ice mapping. It's no easy feat to combine your orbital and landed instruments, but then we have a precedent. Next slide, please. So we've been thinking, I'm on the Viper team, but we've been looking at the Viper data set, millions of spectra, several dozens of drill holes, several kilometers of ground truthing. But how can we put that into a catalog that is covering all the different steps, from the raw data, calibrated, all the way up through the quantitative resource assessments that Laz was talking about earlier. And it was brought up in the chat that even today, you can search the PDFs and look at all the data sets, but sometimes they're fragmented. That's the whole point of the Lunar Resource Catalog, would go through all of this data, follow standards, include documentation. Next slide. We would see it as a knowledge management tool because you're both using the orbital missions and the landed missions and also the knowledge of the people making the maps, making the predictions, and we would grow and adapt as knowledge changes. And we want to be reactive to the community needs. So this would be a database or a catalog that keeps on growing. And it's built on standards to be user-friendly and try to avoid that fragmented aspect. And the final slide. So working on the Viper mission data, we just saw this as a pathfinder to look at how we can create this as a community resource. But this Lunar Resource Catalog concept goes beyond Viper. We are recognizing that the planetary data ecosystem is in a rapid evolution, so we don't really know the specifics of how to implement it. We are reaching out to the community for contents. What should this catalog have? From the researchers, the mission planners, and also commercial and industry. So what would you like to make sure that this catalog contains? So that's the introduction to a Lunar Resource Catalog for the community.